Look, if you want free speech on the internet, well, I mean, you can just make your own platform, right? Like, you're not entitled to speak on Twitter or Facebook. They can have their own moderation policies because you can always just go make your own competitor, can't you? Well, as it turns out, the answer is no. This isn't a surprise to anyone who's been following this over the past couple years. This has been growing. But to many people out there, you may not realize that there's a myth of capitalism in big tech. This is not capitalism anymore because we have an oligopoly of tech companies that actively suppress competition, something that people used to be mad about. Because this isn't about who can compete. This is about who has power. And who has power right now is Twitter, Facebook, Google, Apple, Amazon, and a few others. And by the way, the scheme to participate in their little oligopoly of trillions of dollars, pay to play, shut your mouth, conform to their policies, not yours. It's not your own platform. You don't get access to it. You don't get access to anything. Even if you try and go around them, they will stop you because they control all avenues for distribution, all of them. So don't let people tell you, oh, this is just capitalism. This is just how it works. This isn't capitalism. This is corporatism. This is the enemy of capitalism. It's the enemy of freedom, and it's where liberty dies outside of government. And it's going on right now. And it's not a minor thing. And it's not a one-time thing. Ask Gab. It's happened before. Here's the idea. If you don't like the content moderation policies of some website, the idea is you can make an alternative. But as Gab and now Parler know, if you try and do that, it's a matter of time before your funding is cut off, before your avenues to get to people are cut and shut down, and before your apps and websites are removed. Now, you can implement their policies, you can conform, you can shut up, and then maybe they'll give you access to a tiny percentage of the trillions of dollars in revenue that they make. And there's no rule to this revenue except theirs. That's the thing. They created the environment in freedom, and then they implemented controls over themselves and anyone else, and cut off freedom to every single competitor. Let's talk about what's going on here. Here's Parler. If you haven't heard, Parler is a Twitter alternative. Now, Twitter alternatives like Gab have already existed. None have really taken off, but Parler was rising and rising very quickly to threaten the likes of Twitter. But it wasn't a threat to Twitter. Parler and Twitter can coexist just fine. Remember the coexist sticker that you see on all these idiots' bumpers? Yeah, they can do it just fine. But Parler's not allowed to. Apple says it will kick Parler off the App Store in 24 hours unless its content is moderated. Google suspends Parler app from the Play Store over failure to moderate egregious content. Workers demand Amazon Web drop Parler over posts inciting violence after Capitol riot. Now, why are these three stories important? Well, Google and Apple control something like 90 to 95% of the cell phone environment, where most people use social media apps. Having them off of their app store means that they don't have access to those customers in the same convenient way that Twitter and Facebook do. If you don't have access to those, you're not going to be a social media app. It's just not going to work. But in theory, they could survive on a browser. Right? And let's briefly talk about browsers. Both Google and Twitter have their own browsers, Chrome and Safari. And on Chrome and Safari, you have access to far more disturbing content that is not moderated than you do on Parler. But those are just fine on the App Store, right? Those are okay. Why? Oh, because it's theirs. It's theirs. So those are okay. Because by their definitions of what Parler is doing, both Chrome and Safari are in violation of the terms of service of the App Store. They have the ability to moderate websites. They can't prevent them from existing, but they could prevent Safari or Chrome from accessing them if they wanted to. But they don't. But here's the real kicker. In theory, let's say you could exist in a browser. Not when Amazon shuts you down, because Amazon hosts Parler's web service. And you need a massive host. You need one with real infrastructure if you're going to be a global social media platform. If Amazon shuts you down, by the way, that's a signal to other hosts. They'll shut you down too. If Parler doesn't have Google, Chrome, Google, Apple, or Amazon, they can't play. They can't compete. You can't build your own platform. Because gatekeepers who did not create the platforms that they use, they didn't create the environment that allowed these things to exist. They went where other people had trod, but then they created rules and built a gate to keep them out. This is censorship. This is suppression. This is an oligopoly destroying capitalism and liberty in front of your eyes. Support places like Parler. Support alternative sites. With our support, they might be able to survive. But without it, liberty and speech die in darkness. Drop a comment below. Tell me what you think about this. This is huge news. Like, this is a more egregious encroachment on the idea of capitalism and free speech than I've seen in a while. And I've been talking about it a lot for years now. Have a good day. We'll talk soon. Peace. Peace.